Hi there, friends. My name is Diane. Thank you so much for joining me today for how to emphasize a focal point in oil pastel. So just grab your oil pastels and whatever it is you would like to make your experience great, and let's take a little art break together. Let's get started. Okay, before we get started on the drawing, I'm just going to walk you through the materials you'll need. You'll need a piece of paper suitable for oil pastel drawing. You will need a printout of this painting, or you can copy it off your screen if you prefer, but copying from a paper hard copy surface is easier because the colors will be more accurate. This painting is by Alfred George Stevens. It's called The Sea of Treport. Actually, it's a detail of that painting, done in the 19th century, oil on board. And you'll see that information on the bottom of your screen. So you can pause the video, internet search it, print it out, preferably on photo paper if you care about color quality, because the colors will pop more on photo paper. Or you can do it on copy paper if it's not that important to you. And you will also need your oil pastel kit and a pencil. So with that said, let's get started. We can just draw very loosely. We're going to draw just the middle boat and a bit of the horizon line. And the whole point of this class is how to emphasize a focal point in oil pastel. So we're going to spend a lot of time building color. Well, I mean, it's a short class, so a lot of time relative to how long the class is, building the color. And then at the very end, we're going to put in these tiny, sharp little details, and that's what makes it a focal point of the painting. Versus if you didn't have these, then the whole painting kind of draws your eye, or your eye might go to the next sharpest object, which is this. So with that said, let's get started. We're just going to draw a line for the horizon, and then underneath it we can draw the body of the boat. So it's a little ways down from the horizon, kind of tall on the left side, slopes to be shorter on the right, and then pretty flat on the bottom, something like that. Does not have to be exact. Then draw the mast, which is going to be closer to the left, and go up about that high. You can kind of look at the angle between the mast and the corners of the boat to see how tall it should be, and just use your eye and see, do those angles match? Or if you want to be accurate, which it really doesn't matter for this class, but you can if you want, measure it using your pencil and your thumbnail. Just get an accurate distance there so you can pick up the pencil and keep your thumbnail where it was and compare it to the boat. And it's almost the same length, actually. My eye tells me that that's shorter than the boat, but it's not. So if I wanted to be very accurate, I would take the measurement of the boat and make sure my the mast is that tall. So I'm going to erase these lines because that was just for show. And now we'll put the sail in. That's going to start down the mast a bit, the mainsail, go up at quite a steep angle, and then kind of end up not all the way at the tip of the boat, but about right there. Slopes in just a little bit, and then over to the side, it kind of bumps on the bottom, something like that. And it looks like there might be a person in there. I guess it makes sense that there would be a person in it, otherwise it would be a captainless boat, but you can really barely see them. And then we're going to draw a little triangle over here, which appears to just be kind of floating. It's closer to the mast on the right, a little further, or sorry, on the bottom, a little further on the top. And then it kind of falls in line with this sail if it were to continue going. So I'm going to make it a little taller. And then the left edge hangs out over the boat, something like that. All right, so that's all the drawing we really need to do. I'm just going to erase the horizon line going through the sails. And now we can get on to the coloring part. So first thing we're going to do is put a light layer of a whitish yellow down in the background. If you don't have a whitish yellow in your kit, just use plain white. You can always add a little yellow to it, which we're going to do anyway. But for right now, we're going to color everything, including the sails, because as you can see, this whitish yellow is sort of present either behind everything or just dominant in the water. We're also going to color horizontally because that's the direction the water appears and also the direction the sky appears. And you can see it's smearing my pencil lines a little bit. That's okay. We're going to color over it with other colors anyway. So the only thing in this picture you're not coloring yellowish white is the brown, dark brown boat. Everything else you can color the yellowish white. And we're only doing a section of area around the boat, so just color out a little ways. It doesn't really matter how far. And just kind of get a nice thick coat of white. Well, it doesn't have to be that thick. I'm not pressing tremendously hard, hard enough to build up a decent layer. Let me show you with a color so that you can see how hard I'm pressing. I'm pressing about that hard. So I'm not covering completely. I'm not pressing very hard like that, just kind of getting it mostly covered. And if you press harder or lighter, it's fine. We're going over it anyway. So then we're going to take some more dominant yellow, just like a regular light lemon yellow, and color over the sky. So now I'm not really focusing on the sails, although if you get some into the sails, that's fine. And I'm going to color horizontally again, very lightly, because I don't want the sky to actually turn yellow. I just want to get kind of a yellow presence in there. And because I'm going around the sails, I'm now coloring along the edge rather than completely horizontally, just because it's easier. And then I'll color out from that part. In the water, I'm going to put just some patches of it, mostly over here to the right, because the rest of the water doesn't have nearly as much yellow as the sky does. So something like that. From there, we'll add some blue. I forgot to mention, make sure your colors are clean before you apply them to your image. So just color them on a piece of scratch paper or off to the side to make sure they don't show too much. Or sorry, to make sure they're clean, there's not other colors on them. And then for the blue, you can just kind of put horizontal-ish patches. You can also color kind of in circles. Make sure you get right up to the edge of the sail in several places, not everywhere, but just kind of multiple areas. And the reason to do that is to make sure the sky looks like it goes behind the boat. Otherwise, if you don't touch the sail, you end up with like a little yellow halo around the sailboat, and you don't want that if you're trying to get a realistic effect, or, you know, painterly realistic effect in this case. Something like that. And then for the water, kind of the same thing. Very horizontal for the water, though. We won't do any ovals or curly cues or anything like we did in the sky. A little bit went kind of rogue. And then under the boat, there's these kind of suggestions of lines, which are the reflection of the boat. So I'm just putting in some more distinct lines rather than coloring patches. There's a little bit here, kind of right there. And I'm planting my pastel on the boat and kind of flicking out in some situations to create these wispy lines. Whenever you're not completing a picture up to a frame, that's a nice effect. It just sort of makes it look like it fades off. And then we're going to use some gray to dull down the blues, because the blues are too bright, especially in the water. So I'm going to put some gray over it. Don't worry if this appears very crumbly at this point. It's supposed to. That's the nature of oil pastel. And we are going to go back and blend it so it's smoother as well. So something like that for the water. And then we'll blend it right away. So grab your whitish yellow again, or your white if that was your initial color. Clean it. See, I've got black on mine. I didn't even notice that before I got lucky. And go back into the sky and press pretty hard and color in circles mostly, because that will help break up the horizontalness a little bit. We do want the horizontal nature in there, which is why we did it in the first place. But the sky does have clouds, and it's a little more of a sort of solid mass. There's less texture in the sky than the water, so this will help it to appear kind of smoother in a way. Whereas the water, we're going to do the same thing, but color completely horizontally. And this will help to blend the grays into the blues, into the yellows, and keep that horizontal nature of the ocean, or the lake, or the sea. Not sure what type of body of water this is. Oh, it's a sea. Huh. The title of the painting is Sea of Treeport, right? Okay, and you may have developed some crumbs. If you did, just kind of wipe them off gently with your fingers. And if they don't come off all the way, get them so that they're sort of loosened from the paper, and then you can shake them off, or you can even blow them off. Sometimes that works, or you just have to keep kind of wiping. Something like that. Oops, I got a little streak of red in there. That's okay. This is all just practice and fun. So now that we've got the ocean, the sea in and the sky, we're going to go on to the boat. So for that, we're actually going to use a dark reddish brown for the sail, even though it's very light. We've put white down, whitish yellow down, so that's going to help keep it light, and then we're going to blend with whitish yellow. So kind of just put some edging over the top, a few little strokes, and pull down into the sail in the direction the sail's going. Very vertical. All the way to the bottom. Same thing here. Okay, and then I'm actually going to use kind of a grayish brown. If you have a color like this, great. If you don't, just use light gray and go over it. And that will help to make it sort of that taupey, creamy color. Mine is too dark, but we are going to go over it with white, so that's totally fine. I'm not so concerned about the value, which is just the word that means lightness or darkness. I'm more concerned about matching the color, the hue of what I'm doing. So I've got that, and then I'm going to go over it with some white. And at this point, I've got so much oil pastel on here that the white makes sort of carve the color off. And yeah, that's exactly what's happening. See, it's getting kind of clumpy. If you like that effect, just roll with it. If you don't like that effect, you can use your fingernail and scrape some off and then keep coloring the white, and it will go on much smoother. So you can choose. And if you don't want to use your fingernail, you just got a manicure, or you just don't like it, you can also use a plastic knife, a palette knife, if you have one of those for painting, a coin, just anything with kind of a sharp edge. And I got mine outside the edge there, so I'm just scraping some off. And I really like that painterly look, so I'm going to stop there. And then I'm going to add some darker brown. So actually, yeah, the darker brown is, oh no, I didn't color the boat. I need to color the boat. So I'm going to use that grayish brown again, and that's going to be the base for the boat because that's the lightest color on there. So just coloring a light coat. And then I'm going to use the darker brown and kind of outline it. So find a sharp corner. You should have one just from having colored with your oil pastel. Just find an area that's kind of sharp and gently put it down and almost sort of tap it on the paper and dab until it creates a line. So you're just sort of pulling it over to the right, or if you're left-handed, you can pull it over to the left. Something like that, and literally outline it. And then you can fill in the right side with darker brown, kind of dabbing it over to the left. And I should have done this when I had the reddish brown in my hand, just to demonstrate that's a good thing to do, but I forgot. We also need to do the reflection in the water. So I'm going to put where I see the dark brown in the water. And don't worry, it does seem very dominant at the moment, but we are going to blend it. And I'm going to put a few little dabs right here for the people or person in the boat. Not sure if there's one or two, but there appears to be two things at least. And then a little curly Q thing. And you can choose to leave any of this out. Like if you don't want the curly Q thing, just don't put it in. Now I'm going to go back with the reddish brown and see, will this even show up? Not really, because this is the color I used originally, but I'm trying to get those lines at the bottom of the sails. So I'm going to use a darker brown to do that. And then I'll go over it with the reddish brown. That's better. And I'm going over it with the reddish brown so I can kind of modify the color, but the darkness was achieved by using a darker brown. And since I have this back in my hand, now would be a great time to put in these mostly vertical, but also a little bit horizontal reflections. Something like that. So you can see as we're building the color, the sailboat is starting to pop more away from the background. It's becoming a focal point, but we're not even there yet. This is getting exciting. So let's blend first the colors I just put in the water. So I'm just going to go in very lightly with my gray and color really randomly, kind of just putting in some lines over it to smear it to the right and left, and then doing the same vertically, top to bottom. And that's really all you have to do. You sort of just make a mess on purpose, and it's great fun. Okay, now let's do a little detail work. So we're going to put in that little flag, just grab a bright red and put in a little smattering at the top there. And there's a little bit of red in this person too. So I just put a dab. I'm going to put a little in the water just for funsies. I don't really see any, but you know, I'm just having a good time here. And it creates a reflection. Since we're reflecting one color onto an object right next to it, it's really nice and it creates a more cohesive finished effect if you can reflect the colors onto one another. For the boat, it's not dark enough, and there's a hint of a purple in there, it looks like. So, is this purple? Yeah, I'm going to grab a little bit of purple and just barely color over the light brown to get it a little more purpley looking. And then I'm going to go back with the dark brown and see if I can get it any darker. Not really, so I'm going to have to rely on black for that. I try to use black very sparingly because I feel like it kind of deadens things and can overwhelm an outlined look. But when you just can't get your thing darker, you need black. So now we're going to do the same outliney thing with the black that we did with the brown on the darkest part of the boat, which is the left side and the top edge. Just kind of pulling it over to the right, sort of dabbing it in. It is a really chunky material, oil pastel, so you're not going to get a super fine effect. But that's one reason I chose this image, because we're copying a very chunky painterly oil painting as well, which is not at all super fine. Then watch what happens when I put the mast in. The sails are looking a little unfinished at the moment, but when I put this mast in, and I'm going to be very careful, just kind of building a thick little line at the bottom, and then as thin as I can, and it won't be perfect, I'm going to pull my line up towards that sail. And suddenly the sails look kind of done. Not really, but kind of. And that's the whole point of this painting. It doesn't look kind of done. It looks very loose. But we're almost there. I'm going to put a few more black lines just where I see them at the top corner and edge of that sail. And there's like just a flutter, a suggestion of a line there, and a few little dots just floating in space around this sail for whatever reason. And I'm also going to use the black to just darken this shadow underneath the boat a little bit, just sort of dab in a little color. So that's the lesson on creating or emphasizing a focal point in oil pastel. I hope you got something out of it and can carry this forward into your next art adventure. And thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.